Hello, everybody. I'm very sorry for our technical issues. I had to restart my computer and I had a lot of different sort of problems with getting everything working, but I'm here now, so rather late than never, as we say in English, rather, you know, start to do something later than planned than never at all. So here we are. My name is Tanita, if you didn't already know. I am an ESL coach and I help English learners learn English independently, faster than maybe sort of trying to do it on your own, and smarter rather than harder. That is my goal and what I'm all about, giving you all the tools and things you need to learn smart. All right, so I don't want to waste too much time. I know it took a long time for us just to get here, so let's get started. I just want to make my video a little bit bigger. All right, so as you know, today we are talking about some movies and series. We're going to look at the different genres of movies and series. So if you don't know what a genre is, it really is just another word for theme or topic. All right, so it is a French word, so the pronunciation's a little difficult. Genre, genre. So we don't have the S on the end, and it's also not genre, it's genre. Okay. If you hear my dogs barking in the background, nothing I can do about that. I have 2 dogs, 2 cats, and a lot of neighbors. It is a Sunday, so my neighbors have some people over. So yeah, let's get straight into it. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Let's look at our movies and series genres. So we'll start. The first one that we're looking at is action. This is a really common type of genre that we get. So action movies and series involve thrilling and fast-paced sequences featuring exciting stunts and fights, explosions, all right? They often revolve around heroes or spies, and there are normally a lot of daring adventures and missions, all right? So we'll quickly look at some of these words. So fast-paced sequences. So fast-paced just means they're quick, and a sequence is like a series of things that happen. So if you're watching a car chase, for example, it normally happens really quickly. All right, that sequence where they're driving down the road and then they turn around a corner and then there's another car in front of them shooting guns. That is a sequence that will normally happen very quickly. There are a lot of exciting stunts. So stunts are what we call sort of the actions or movements that a lot of the actors will do. So if you see a car driving on a ramp and then flying in the air, that is a stunt where somebody will actually be driving the car and sort of controlling that situation. Or when you see somebody jump from the second floor onto the ground and then they jump and roll, that is a type of a stunt. All right, there are lots of fights and explosions. All right, there are normally some kind of hero or some kind of evil person in these, or sometimes even spies. So some examples of action movies is Die Hard, The Dark Knight, and Mad Max Fury Road. Okay, so I included some examples of these movies just so that you have an idea of that genre. I do just want to mention most movies never only fit one genre, they will fit multiple genres. So, for example, a movie like The Dark Knight is not only an action movie, it probably fits 1 or 2 or maybe even more other genres, which we will cover today. So that's an important thing to know about movie genres. Okay, so we have action. The next one we have is the all popular comedy. Okay, so comedy movies and series, their aim is to entertain and make you laugh. They will normally include lots of humorous, which is another word for funny, situations witty dialogue and comedic performances. It can range from what we call slapstick humor to very witty banter or even satire. Again, let's look at some of this vocabulary. Humorous is another word for funny, all right? Witty is normally when the humor is very smart in nature. So if something is, for example, witty banter or witty dialogue, we mean it's quite smart in the way that it's created. Like you have to think a little bit about that dialogue. Okay? Slapstick is not one of my favorites. I really don't enjoy slapstick comedy. If you've ever watched a movie from Adam Sandler, for example, or with, I'm trying to think of his name, Will Ferrell, for example, they do a lot of what I would call slapstick comedy, where the comedy is funny, but it's also really stupid funny. Like what is happening is so stupid and so not possible and ridiculously dumb. That is normally what we call slapstick. All right, so when it's kind of stupid and it's very obvious, some people love it and it really makes them laugh, not my favorite. Banter kind of means to tease. So when you kind of joke or tease with someone and you try and, like make them believe something that isn't real, but it's just a joke, that is what we call banter. So we can also do that in a very smart way. And satire covers other areas of comedy like sarcasm or irony. These are other methods of banter that we get. All right. Okay, some examples. I just wanted to check that my mic and everything was working. So some examples of these types of movies, we've got Airplane, Bridesmaids, and The Hangover, which I know is really quite sort of famous. Probably one of the more famous movies here, The Hangover. Ben Stiller is also a very common sort of actor when it comes to comedy. He does a lot of comedy work. So yes, that is comedy. Not my favorite kind of genre, but sometimes there are some good comedies out there. I generally find newer comedies are not as exciting or funny as some of the older classic comedies. Let's go into our next genre, which is a drama. I love dramas, especially if they're done well and if they have a really good story. I really enjoy them. So dramas focus on realistic and very emotional storytelling. The idea is to sort of be really quite serious and intense, and they focus on themes like love, loss, personal struggles, and even societal issues. The whole point of a drama is to sort of get those really strong emotions going and to really engage you on a deeper level. All right, so they're supposed to be quite emotional. They make you cry, or they make you feel like it's very heartwarming, sort of what you see sometimes. So some examples of a drama, we've got The Shawshank Redemption, which is, I also know falls into other genres, right? But it is also a drama. We've got Schindler's List, which is another kind of drama and does also fall into other genres. It's very sort of invokes these kind of strong emotions around the story. And then even The Godfather has quite a bit of a drama theme because it focuses on the relationships and the personal struggles that they have there. So looking at some of this vocabulary, right? When we say that something is intense, we mean that it's very strong. All right. If something is intense, it's quite strong in the way that it makes us feel. Evoke is another word for create in this example, to kind of bring about. All right. To sort of bring this thing into view. All right, so strong emotions, we want to create strong emotions and keep you engaged on what is happening. Like I say, I really enjoy a good drama. Our next genre is a very, very famous one, romance. Now, these, of course, focus on love and relationships. They look at the emotional journey of those relationships, the ups and the downs. So, in English, when we say the ups and downs of relationships, we mean the good times and the bad times of a relationship. These types of movies normally include other types of genres, like, for example, it could be a romantic comedy, it could be a period drama romance, it could even be a tragic love story. So, romantic comedies, we tend to shorten in English, we call it a rom-com. Okay, so we never say, oh, I feel like a romantic comedy. We normally say, let's watch a rom-com tonight. So we like to shorten that. In English, looking at some of the vocabulary, right? So we've got the word here, navigate, as they navigate the ups and downs. So navigate really means to just sort of steer through, to kind of, work through the ups and downs as they go through this journey. All right. So some examples, Titanic, right, was a love story, okay, a bit of a tragic love story because, he didn't survive. So that's why we would say it's a tragic love story. The Notebook, one of my favorite movies. I feel like The Notebook was done really, really well. It's a little bit funny, but it's also got a lot of romance in it. It's a love story. It looks at how they struggled to have this relationship. And then it's also quite sad, sort of how it ends as well. And then, of course, we have Romeo and Juliet, another tragic love story. All right, of course, not all love stories have to be tragic. Some of them are really just beautiful and happy at the end of the day. Next is sci-fi, one of my favorite genres. I love sci-fi. I am a Trekkie. If you don't know what that is, it means that you love Star Trek, basically. There's normally always a debate and a war between people who love Star Trek and people who love Star Wars. Now, I like both of them, but Star Trek is more my style because I like the discovery that comes with it, whereas Star Wars is a little bit more action. So Star Wars is a good example of how it's sci-fi, but it's also action. It's also a little bit of drama. There's quite a few genres that we would find in that. So what is sci-fi? Now, sci-fi often takes place in the future. I mean, they can happen in the now, but they would normally happen in a world that isn't quite what it is right now. Like it would be different. So normally you would see a lot of advanced technologies. You might see certain scientific concepts like space travel, exploring the possibilities of other or alternative universes or extraterrestrial life. So extraterrestrial just means aliens. All right, so terrestrial normally means of relating to Earth, and extra normally means outside of Earth. So when we normally add extra, we could mean like more or outside, beyond a certain area or space when we have that prefix. And they blend elements normally of action and adventure as well. So we haven't gotten to the adventure genre, but we will get to it soon. So here we can see some examples like Blade Runner, Inception, and even The Matrix. Now, Inception is an interesting one because it feels a little bit more like it's happening in the world today, but it uses an advanced sort of technology and scientific concepts of this sort of dream world. And that's why we might call it a sci-fi. Okay. So yeah, that is sci-fi, normally involving spaceships, other planets, aliens, or just even advanced technology. There doesn't have to be any space travel. It could just be a kind of technology that doesn't exist yet, like robots, for example, that would then be considered sci-fi, like in the movie I, Robot with Will Smith. I think it's called I, Robot. Yes, very famous one as well. where everything is happening on Earth, but there are robots that sort of, are part of the workforce. And it's a little bit about how they go rogue, or at least one does. One becomes sort of sentient like AI and starts to think for itself. And that makes it a sci-fi movie. Okay, my favorite genre. Next, we have fantasy, which is probably my next favorite genre. Now, these are normally involving magical or supernatural elements with imaginative worlds, with mystical creatures, epic quests, and extraordinary powers. All right, they normally have also elements of adventure, magic, or even folklore. So let's look at some of the vocabulary here. So we've got magical or supernatural. So magical, I think, is quite straightforward in its meaning magic, pretty much. So think Harry Potter, like in the picture. All right, so magical would mean having magic, like witches and wizards, but it could be different as well. It could be something like Peter Pan, where we have fairy dust or these magical worlds. Supernatural, this just means that something isn't sort of natural, like what we would see in the world that we live in today. So think of things like supernatural animals, could be things like unicorns. All right, unicorns are a perfect example of a supernatural element that we might see in these kinds of movies. And dwarfs and elves, those are also supernatural elements that we find in fantasy movies. They normally involve very imaginative worlds with mythical creatures. Now, mythical creatures are normally the kinds of creatures that we find in our own history. All right, they're still fantasy because they aren't real, but in the past, a lot of these mythical creatures were worshipped or part of, sort of religions or sort of spirituality. These could be things like a phoenix, right? That is the sort of bird that burns and then rises from the ashes. All right, that is a mythical, supernatural creature, for example. Epic quests, right? Lord of the Rings is a very good example of that, where they have this quest to destroy this ring. All right, even in Harry Potter, there is an epic quest to kill Voldemort, right? So that's what we mean there. Epic just means like really big or really great, for example. All right, so we can use it in different ways as well. Like I had an epic meal last night, meaning I had a really fantastic meal last night. It was really good. And extraordinary powers, which is just another word, extraordinary for like great. Okay, so it's a kind of an adjective that sort of deeply or strongly expresses something really fantastic or great or astonishing, for example. All right, and then folklore, I think, is the next word here. Folklore could be things like what sometimes we even still think we have to find today. So, for example, things like the Loch Ness Monster, or even things like the Yeti, are sometimes considered folklore because they don't really exist today, but a lot of people still believe that they do, and maybe they do. Maybe we just haven't found them yet. But folklore is kind of these stories that come from our past, from a very long time ago, that sort of get passed on from generation to generation. So things like Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, those kinds of things would be considered folklore. We get good, nice folklore, but we also get sort of the more evil folklore, like the monster under the bed type of a thing. So some popular examples of movies, we've got The Lord of the Rings, of course, which is a trilogy. Trilogy just means three, means there's three movies in that sort of series. We have the Harry Potter series of movies, and then we also have Pan's Labyrinth, okay, which is another example of a fantasy. Our next genre is a thriller, okay. I don't mind a good thriller. It's not my favorite, but I don't mind a good thriller. Thrillers are suspenseful and intense. They keep you on the edge of your seat. We'll look at this vocabulary soon. They typically involve mystery, suspense, and even plot twists, okay? They often have a sort of element of danger, espionage, crime, and even psychological suspense. All right, let's look at the vocabulary. So suspense or suspenseful. You know, when you're watching a movie and the music is kind of building and it goes like din 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 din, and then you know that something is going to happen when you get to the end of that tune. That is what we call suspense. It's creating this, I know something's going to happen, but when is it going to happen? This is what we call suspense. And these movies build or rely a lot on that, not necessarily to scare you, but just to kind of build that feeling like, oh, something's about to happen. Okay. And it says it will keep you on the edge of your seats. So when we're on the edge of our seats, it means that we're very sort of excitedly or eagerly waiting for something. So if you're sitting on the edge of your seat, it means like you really want to see what happens next. You're very curious about what's going to come. So you're focused and you're paying attention, you're waiting. All right, they have mystery, suspense, and a plot twist. So a plot twist is what happens in a movie where it sort of leads you into thinking that this is the story and this is what's going to happen. You think, oh, you know, like I know the story. I know what's going to happen. But a plot twist is when suddenly you're going through the story and you're like, yeah, I know what's going to happen. You know, he's the killer. It's so obvious. And then suddenly it changes the whole story and you're like, oh, he wasn't the killer. It was that person. Like she was the killer. I never expected that. That is what we call a plot twist. All right. So it's when it's a very unexpected thing that happens. You know, the movie leads you into one sort of idea and then suddenly goes, nope, you're wrong. This is the actual reality. All right. They have danger and espionage. So espionage is the word that we use when we typically see spies or spying activities in a movie. We call that espionage. Crime, and then obviously psychological. So psychological suspense really just means sort of playing with the mind a little bit in terms of the suspense. Some examples, The Silence of the Lambs, which I've never seen, but The Silence of the Lambs is an example, Gone Girl, and even Seven are all considered thrillers. Thrillers often will also have like a killer or a serial killer in the movie. They normally follow those kinds of things. We also get thrillers when it comes to financial crimes. So you might see some movies are a little bit more about finance or financial crimes, where there's a little bit of a psychological kind of suspense there. It doesn't mean that there's killing, but there's something going on there. And that could be a thriller. Let's go to our next one, which is the horror. My worst, I hate it. I don't like horrors at all. They give me nightmares. So my husband likes horrors. So if we watch horrors, I always ask him if we can watch it during the day, or at least not the last thing of the day. Because if I watch a horror, I will dream about that. I dream about what I watch and go through during the day. So if I watch a horror before bed, I will have nightmares. So a horror is a movie or a series that aims to frighten you. The whole idea is to scare you and cause you to feel fear. All right, and that's why I don't like these. They often will have some kind of supernatural entities. So here we've got that word supernatural, meaning something that doesn't actually exist in this world, like monsters or even some psychological terrors. So it could be something like these nightmares. If you think of Freddy Krueger, right? He is like a nightmare psychological terror. These genres can go from supernatural horrors to psychological horrors, or even what we call our slasher films. So if you've ever watched a movie like Scream, I think it is, not the I'm talking about the Scream original movies, not the comedy ones that have sort of kind of mock or have a comedy spin on them. I'm talking about like the original Scream movies is a typical slasher film where you've got a killer who goes through and just kind of kills and slashes people, basically. All right. Chainsaw Massacre could also somewhat be considered a bit of a slasher in a way because it's just about blood and guts and ugh. Okay. Some other examples, we've got The Shining, we've got Get Out, and then we've also got A Quiet Place. All right. We've also got things like Annabelle, and then a horror that I saw when I was a kid that haunts me to this day, Child's Play, which has like a little doll called Chucky who comes to life and starts killing people. Yeah, I had nightmares about that movie for years. And to this day, I don't want to watch that movie ever again. Some bad memories as a child. So that is the horror genre. So just be careful with the pronunciation. I sort of hear a lot of my students try to go horror, roar, because we think R-O-R, horror, but it's horror. So it's got a sound at the end. The R is not really pronounced, and neither is the O. It becomes sort of more of a UA kind of sound. Horror, horror. Okay. Next, we have animation. All right. My least favorite kind of movies. Besides horror, I really don't like animation. I don't know why. I just don't like it. Animated movies use various animation techniques to bring their characters to life. All right. Normally, these are for all ages, so it's a very family-friendly movie, and they will have multiple genres like comedy, adventure, fantasy, sci-fi, and more in these kinds of movies. So some of the vocabulary, all right, I think the only word here is cater. They cater to audiences. If we cater, it means that we serve. All right, so we serve a particular audience. So in other words, they serve or are made for people of all ages, and they can span multiple genres. Span just means they can be across or spread over multiple genres. I mean, if we look at the examples here, like Toy Story, okay, this Toy Story is quite interesting. We've got a little bit of adventure, right? Because normally there's like an adventure and a goal that they need to go and get. It's a little bit funny because they have some jokes or weird or funny things happening in there. But it's also a little bit of maybe we could say a little bit of fantasy because I mean it's toys coming to life. Okay, not something that we see in the real world. Some other examples, we've got Finding Nemo, Talking Fish, and then we've got Spirited Away, which is another example of animations. Now, there are normally two types of animations. We get the animations like this, where we call or use CG, which just means computer generated, meaning the images are created on a computer. But we also get sort of the older animation style. So if you think of the original Lion King, for example, that would sort of be the more hand-drawn images that were then sort of drawn frame by frame and then recorded, basically. That would be your sort of other style of animation. I'm not too sure what that's called. I know that the newer one is called CG, but I don't know what the old school animation is called. Personally, I prefer older animations. I just think the stories are better. I think they are a little more related to real life compared to the newer movies, which I feel are really just trying to entertain. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes, I mean, that's what movies are. They're entertainment. I just prefer having deeper connections with my characters in the storyline. That's just my preference. But these are great if you just want something silly and want to escape the real world. Animations are great and friendly for everybody. Next, we have a documentary. Okay, so documentaries are all about real life events. So people, subjects, or even events through what we call a non-fictional lens. So we get fiction and non-fiction. All right, if it's non-fictional, it means that it's based in real life. All right, everything is based on the real world and how we understand the real world, whereas fictional or fiction can be a little bit more about the imagination. Documentaries are normally all about educating, informing, providing insight on different topics like history, nature, social issues, biographies, and of course, a lot more different things. So some examples, March of the Penguins, Blackfish, or Won't You Be My Neighbor are some examples of documentaries. Okay. So looking at some of the other vocabulary. So when we say lens, this is just another word for viewpoint or perspective. Okay, it's, if you think about it like a camera has a lens, right? If you have two different lenses with two different zooms, right? If I look at this one, I might see more of the picture, and if I look through this one, I might see less of the picture, depending on the zoom and how they're different. So we can use lens as a meaning of like perspectives to see things in different ways, depending on how they are positioned, right? For example, if you're watching something from National Geographic, you're going to learn about nature in a way or from a perspective that you've never seen before. You living in the city might not have information or access to that kind of situation. So it will give you a different perspective or allow you to see it from a different lens. It's a very nice word there. So some other examples like Diana, all right, we've obviously got the Taylor Swift Miss Americana that came out about a year or two ago, which I quite enjoyed. And then obviously a few others. There are so many different types of documentaries. All right, I enjoy my documentaries. Like I say, I normally enjoy things that are a little more real, with the exception of sci-fi and fantasy. I really do enjoy those genres as well. Okay. Next, we have mystery. So mystery movies and series normally involve investigation. Something is a bit puzzling and a sort of strange or event or a crime that people cannot figure out, right? They cannot solve it. They normally have some suspense, some storytelling with a little bit of suspense. There might be clues or even those wonderful plot twists as they try to uncover the truth and solve the mystery. Now, a lot of mysteries can sometimes be based around crimes, like missing people, for examples, but mysteries don't only have to be around that. It could be around other types of crimes that don't include missing people. It could be like, who stole the money or who robbed the bank, for example. All right, some other examples is Gone Girl, The Usual Suspects, and Knives Out. Some other examples of mysteries. Okay, so looking at some vocabulary, we have puzzling. If something is puzzling, right, we're just saying that it is confusing. So this is another word for confusing, another adjective that we can use to describe something as confusing or puzzling. All right. And I think everything's fine. We looked at plot twists. Clues are just like little things that direct you or give you information to help you find the story. And yeah, all about solving the mystery. Okay. Next, we have historical. Okay, I think this is the last genre, and then we're going to look at 5 sort of common vocabulary words that I thought would be nice to learn around movies. So historical movies and series are normally set in the past. They're there to sort of, show or portray significant events or periods of time or even people or figures from history. They will include a lot of drama normally, some romance, war, and even offer insights into those different time periods and cultures. So, for example, here we can see Scarlett Johansson. She looks like it. I don't know what century this could be. I'm thinking maybe 16th, 17th century. She's probably a princess or a queen here. And she's playing, I don't know what movie it's from, but she's probably playing or portraying this particular person and sort of showing us the story of their lives, or from records, what we think their lives were like. And here's another example. I think it's The Theory of Everything. All right, so it's all centered around a particular person. I think it was about Stephen Hawking, for example, and it's about his life, and sort of, how he went through his life and his discoveries. We would call that historical because it's about him. It looks at history. All right, some other examples. We've got Schindler's List again. All right, remember I said a lot of movies and series will sort of be part of multiple genres. So we have Schindler's List, we have Braveheart, and then we have Dunkirk. Dunkirk, if I remember, is about the war. I can't remember if it was World War One or World War Two. Dunkirk, I think, is World War Two. Oh, my history. Braveheart is a very popular, very famous movie, I think, about, and I'm probably going to get this wrong because it's been so long since I've seen it, but I know that it has to do with Scottish history and the war that happened, I think, back in the day there. And then Schindler's List is a little bit about World War II and the camps in Germany, for example. So that is historical. I enjoy my historical movies. I especially love movies that are about the 18th century England. I don't know why. I enjoy them and I like them. All right. Okay, no, this is our last one. So we do have adventure here as well. So adventures take you on a thrilling journey or a quest. All right. A quest is just another word for a journey. They normally have exploration, some treasure hunts, some kinds of expeditions to unknown or exotic locations. All right, they normally have action, fantasy, and even some discovery put in there. You can think of even things like The Mummy in some ways is a little bit of an adventure because it's all about like discovering the history in the pyramids, if I remember. So there's a little bit of adventure there along with the horror as well. So some examples, Indiana Jones, very popular, The Goonies, and even Jurassic Park, right? Because it's an adventure in that you've got this exotic or unknown world and location. So something like Jurassic Park would be a little bit of fantasy, sci-fi, and then adventure. We also have things like Jumanji, all right? Again, adventure, fantasy, because it's not in the real world. But there is a quest or a game or an objective, a treasure hunt, for example. All right, so there are lots of different types of adventures that we get. In terms of the vocabulary here, so an expedition, I find this word often gets confused. I even struggle with these words. Expedition and exhibition. An exhibition is where you go to an art gallery and view art and they showcase the art, whereas an expedition is like a treasure hunt or a journey through the natural world. All right, that's a little bit different. Exotic just means something that is really unusual or strange for you, but can also be really beautiful. All right, so often like the Amazon jungle would be described as exotic because there's just so many unusual animals and plants, and it's like really beautiful and different to maybe what we're used to seeing every day. All right. Musicals, so we still have some more genres. Musicals incorporate song and dance, okay? That is a very important part of a musical movie. They will have characters that will express their emotions or advance through advance the plot through music and choreography. Choreography means like dancing, for example. They also have many different genres like comedy, romance, or even fantasy. Okay. Some very popular examples, The Sound of Music, we've got La La Land, and then we also have Moulin Rouge, one of my favorite movies as well. I really enjoyed Moulin Rouge. It was a good movie, a little bit older. So some other examples could be things like Hairspray. All right, that's another really popular one. Rent is another one. Sing, which is an animated musical. The idea is if you have a lot of singing and songs through the movie, then it's probably a musical. Okay. I enjoy musicals, but only some of them. I find a lot of them are not done as well as I would like, but there are also a lot that I really enjoy. Like Pitch Perfect, for example, is a musical that I enjoy because it's a little more modern, a little bit about like a cappella and singing, and it feels a bit more real world, but also a musical. And I love the way that they sort of made it very realistic, but sort of brought the music in as well. So some of the vocabulary, incorporate just is another word meaning to include. All right. Revolve, they often revolve, which means they center or they're often focused around characters that express emotions, or advance, the plot through music and choreography. Choreography is like a planned and well thought out dance routine. All right, that is the musical genre. And then we have a Western. I know I included 15 genres in total. So Westerns are set normally in American Old West, okay? Very specific to sort of American culture because this was a very big sort of part of American history was sort of the Westerns, for example. So here you're going to see your cowboys, your outlaws, and then what we would call frontier life. They will normally have themes of justice or rugged landscapes, gunfights, and then sort of the clashes or the arguments between lawmen, so your sheriff, for example, and then your outlaws, those who didn't want to follow the rules. Okay, so some examples, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Django Unchained, all right, and then True Grit are all examples of Westerns. Okay. Some vocabulary here, an outlaw is normally a person who tries to live outside of the law, somebody who doesn't want to follow the law, normally kind of a criminal, breaking all the rules, for example. Now, frontier life, what we mean by frontier here is because there are many different sort of definitions of this word. Frontier means sort of on the extreme edges of a particular town, or of a city, for example. So sort of living on the edges of society, and then normally beyond those edges would be wilderness, just open land, all right, and the wild. So that's what we mean by frontier life. If you watch Westerns and enjoy them, they're often happening out in the wilderness or quite far out from really big cities and that, which is what we might call frontier life, because you're living in very small cities that are also quite far from sort of more city hubs, for example. All right, another word here, rugged landscape. So rugged just means rough. All right, so think like lots of rocks and dry and, not a lot of growth and abundance. All right, rugged means they're rough and they're difficult to walk through and navigate, and it might be hard to get water and things like that. All right, and then clash. A clash just means like when two things just don't work together. They don't do or connect in the right way. So if we clash, it means that we disagree. All right, so there we go. We have our Westerns genre. Right, let's look at some common vocabulary. The first one that we have here, we've only got 5 words. The first one is the protagonist. This is the main character, the hero of a movie or series. They normally are the main focus of a movie or series, and they are what drives the story forward. So the story is basically all about them and their journey and their struggles. We call them the protagonist. So for example, we've got Simba. He's the protagonist. I don't remember her name in Star Wars, but we've got her. All right, we've got Thor, for example, and then Harry Potter. They are all the good people, the heroes, the people who are trying to overcome the challenges. All right, the movie in the series is basically about them and their lives, and they are the good people. We call them the protagonist of the movie or the hero. You could just say hero. Then we have the opposite, which is the antagonist. All right, antagonist. So we've got the protagonist and antagonist. So pro as a prefix normally means like positive, and then an as a prefix can mean sort of the negative or anti, for example. Anti means like disadvantage, like the bad, the negative. Okay. Pro for positive, anti for negative. So antagonist, the character or the force that opposes, and it creates a lot of conflict, a lot of challenge for the protagonist. It doesn't have to be a person. Sometimes it can be an organization. Sometimes it could be a black hole. All right. It doesn't actually have to be a person as an antagonist. It just has to be the thing that is creating a lot of conflict or challenge for the protagonist. The antagonist could be a villain, a rival, or just an obstacle that they must overcome. So in Harry Potter, we have Voldemort. He is the antagonist because Harry has to consistently overcome him and his followers and all of those in the movies. I know this is from Silence of the Lambs. I think I haven't seen it. He's the main character, one of the main characters, the antagonist, who I believe is a killer. Not sure. Okay. And then we have obviously Darth Vader from Star Wars, where he's the evil guy, right? He has this entire empire that is trying to take over the universe basically and be in charge, and is very evil and does things in a bad way. Okay. So next we have sequel. Now, sequel often gets confused with the next word, which is franchise. So let's have a look here. A sequel is when a movie or series continues the story or expands upon the events of a previous movie or series. They will feature the same characters, and the narrative, which is another word for story, will be connected. So for example, if we look at something like Harry Potter, if we look at Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, then goes into Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, then it's the Prisoner of Azkaban, then it's the Goblet of Fire. So this is a sequel. These are all sequels. So the second movie continues the story from the first movie using the same characters. And the third movie does the same. It's the same for Lord of the Rings. The first movie starts the story, the second one continues. So they just sort of continue. They use the same characters. It's all connected. Okay. Star Wars is another example of that. We even have the Joker, for example, where we learn a little bit about that sort of story there. So let's see how that's different to a franchise. This is where there's a lot of confusion. A franchise is a collection of movies or series that are connected through shared character settings or storylines. They often will include sequels, prequels, spin-offs, and related merchandise. So if we go back to Harry Potter and those 7, or I think it's about 10 movies in total, are all sequels. They are all part of the connected story. But if we look at things like Fantastic Beasts, that would be part of the franchise. Fantastic Beasts doesn't really have the same characters. It doesn't follow the exact same story of Harry's journey, but it is part of the same world and universe. It's still part of that universe where we've got witches and wizards and muggles and all these things in Fantastic Beasts happening. It's in a different timeline as well, which is something to consider. But that is a franchise where it's connected, but it's not the same. It's not the same story. It's another story happening in a different timeline, but in the same universe. Another good example of that could be things like DC Comics and Marvels. So we have all these superheroes, so like Iron Man and then Captain America and Hulk, they are part of the franchise. They all have their own stories. There might be 1, 2, 3, 4 movies for each character, but the franchise is all of those movies or series and spin-offs that come from that. We call that a franchise. So a spin-off is basically where, like Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts is a spin-off of Harry Potter. It's about a specific book and a specific thing where, we see a spin-off. It's one element from Harry Potter that's been taken and created into its own movie sort of series. That's what we mean by a spin-off. Another example of a spin-off is if you've ever watched The Big Bang Theory, all right, with Sheldon and Leonard and Wolowitz and all of them, Kusrapali. A spin-off of that would be, I think it's called Young Sheldon, where it looks at Sheldon when he was younger. That is a spin-off of The Big Bang Theory. Okay. And then last word, binge watch. Binge watch, I really like this word, and it's quite a new word that I think everybody should know because we all do this, I think. The act of watching multiple episodes or an entire season of a TV series in one session over a short period of time. So when you sit down at night and you're like, oh, I'm going to watch this whole season of Game of Thrones, you are binge watching that series for that night. So in the past, when we didn't have streaming services like Netflix and Prime and Hulu, we were not able to do this. We had to watch one episode on that one day when it showed on TV. So I remember when I was younger and Grey's Anatomy had started, it was like every Sunday at 7 p.m. You would only get one episode and then you would have to wait an entire week to see the next episode. All right, today we don't have to do that. We can just watch it all at the same time. And we call that to binge watch. All right. That is our movies and series genres. I hope you learned something new today. Just remember, there is a little exercise. If you complete this exercise, you can get a free 50-minute session with me where I can help you with where you are in your English, give you a study plan, give you some advice on how to study better, or just find where your challenges are and how to move forward. So if you want to win this prize, you need to answer these 2 questions. What genre of movie do you like and why? And do you like to binge watch anything? If yes, what do you like to binge watch? Binge watch. How you win is you complete the whole exercise, share your answer in the comments section of this video, and it must be submitted no later than 1 week after this video was released. So you have until next Sunday, 3 p.m. or so to submit your answer in the comments, and you can win a 50-minute one-on-one session from me. No cost to you at all. All right, and you can use that 50 minutes however you want. All right. Some quick announcements that I do just want to mention is I'm also going to be releasing a Phrasal Verb Bootcamp on the 19th of June. All right, it's a 5-day bootcamp where you will have a video story every day with phrasal verbs. In each of those videos, I will also explain those phrasal verbs, and then you will also be sent some self-paced activities, 3 to 5 exercises where you can practice these phrasal verbs in different contexts as well. In this bootcamp, there will be over 50 phrasal verbs that you can learn. Because it's my first launch, I'm also offering a crazy founders sort of fee. So if you are the first one to join this bootcamp, you're going to pay only $10 to join this bootcamp, and you'll learn how to use over 50 phrasal verbs. I often say and truly believe a lot of the difference between what I would say is the difference between intermediate and more advanced English users is their use and understanding of phrasal verbs. So if you really want to improve your English and know those common phrasal verbs that we use all the time, I highly recommend joining this bootcamp. I will include details in the description so you can check it out and see if this is something you would like to join. I also do have a freebie, so if you want to learn more about habits, because they do say habits are the things that determine your success in life. So if you really want to be successful at English, you probably need to start with your habits. All right, your habits determine what your life looks like. So I created a free workbook and document to tell you a little bit more about how to build habits so that you can really be successful in your English. It's completely free. Details will be in the description. I also have some vocabulary templates, so if you love to learn new words but can never remember them, my vocabulary templates are really fun and easy to use. All right, we've got some templates that are like games, for example, like Pictionary or Roll the Dice. They're digital and printable, meaning you don't have to print them. You can fill them all in on your tablet, computer, or even your cell phone. All right. Some of them, like I say, are like games, which makes it really a great way to effectively learn and remember vocabulary. Word association is the main or one of the most important things when it comes to recall. So if you're learning a new word, but you're not associating it and creating connections with that word, the chances of you remembering them is very low. So these vocabulary templates are designed to create stronger connections and associations, which will let you remember and use that vocabulary when you need it. There's nothing worse than being in a conversation. You're like, I don't know that word. Or when somebody doesn't understand what you mean because you can't remember that word that you need to really express yourself. I'm not saying that you should never forget a word in conversation. I do as well. That is normal. But when you're learning a new language, this happens more often. And a lot of these words we do want to use regularly, but it's very difficult to get them into the long-term memory. Now, these vocabulary templates, you can buy all of them or just the ones you need. So if you want the word of the week template, you can get just that one if you feel like that looks like fun and you want to give it a try. All right, you don't have to buy them all. You can buy them separately as well. And they're under $2. So really very reasonably priced as well. And then I also have a community. So if you want to join my newsletter where I let you know about things that are happening, I give you practice activities, I send you interesting articles, and then also just share any content or insightful tips or information that I have for you, then you can also join my newsletter. All of these and all the information will be in the description. Okay. That is it for our live today. I hope you enjoyed learning about some movie genres and some nice common vocabulary that we can use to talk about the characters or, the franchise or sequels, for example. It was lovely to have you here for this video, and I will see you in the next video. All right, so see you next time. If you're interested in joining any of these programs or getting your free habit building download, you let me know. And you can click on the link and download it. All right. It was lovely to have you. Have a wonderful Sunday afternoon, and I will